Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have been quite a hot topic within the Zelda fanbase. Some fans say that these games deviate from the classic formula that made the series great in the first place, whereas others argue that these open-air games are among the best, if not the best, in the entire franchise. And while I love these games, I do fall into the former group of people. Their step away from the elements that made a Zelda game up until now have left a bitter taste in my mouth, wishing that old Zelda would come back. But after a long 8 years, Nintendo gave us just what the Zelda series needed. Just over a year and a half after Tears of the Kingdom's release, Nintendo gave us Echoes of Wisdom, another brand new Zelda game. Teamed up with Grezzo, the company responsible for the remake of Link's Awakening, they made the first official Zelda game where we play as Zelda. I love this game. It jumped up to and has consistently stayed at my 5th favorite Zelda game in the entire series and hasn't even been out for a year. I find myself continuously coming back to it even after beating it multiple times, and I believe that everyone should play it whether they miss old Zelda or became a fan because of the open-air games. I'm Mr. Z, and this is Zelda Discussions. Echoes of Wisdom has a great story that develops as we, the players, progress through the game. We haven't had this in years. Breath of the Wild introduced the concept of the game's story taking place in the past, experienced through collecting memories with the ability to obtain said memories in any order that the player chooses. And this can allow the player to spoil the game early on or completely bypass experiencing the story in the first place. But Echoes of Wisdom brought back the classic form of storytelling that we've been missing for 8 years, as well as building upon the established lore instead of disregarding it entirely. If you haven't played the game, spoiler warning now and you can skip to the end of this section. But for those who have played the game or simply don't care about spoilers, here's a basic rundown. In the introduction, we are immediately thrust into the action of the game. We play as Link fighting our way through a dungeon, and at the end of it, we see that Zelda has been captured by Ganon, and that Link has come to her rescue. This is a very unique beginning, as these are usually the events that take place at the end of most Zelda games. But after defeating Ganon, however, a strange rift opens up, swallowing Link. Link saves Zelda from her crystal prison by firing an arrow before he's taken completely. The rift suddenly expands rapidly in pursuit of Zelda. After narrowly escaping and being discovered by 2 royal guards, Zelda then heads back to Hyrule Castle. At this point in the game, we don't know anything about what's going on behind the scenes. We only know that Ganon seems to be in charge of all of this and that the rifts have been taking people for as long as anyone can remember, informed to us by the King of Hyrule. However, after talking to the King of Hyrule and learning a bit about what's been happening, a rift opens up in the throne room, taking the king and his associates, only then to be replaced with doppelgangers who order for Zelda's execution. Confused, Zelda is taken to the castle dungeon to be held before she's executed. This is where we meet Tri, our companion, who gives Zelda the Tri-Rod and teaches her how to use it. The Tri-Rod allows Zelda to learn and cast echoes, which are objects found in the world as well as slain monsters. And this mechanic is central to the game as a whole. But after breaking out of the castle with this new ability with Impa's assistance, Zelda makes her way to the Suthorn region to find Impa's brother. But Impa's brother's house has been consumed by the rift from Ganon, so we return to the ruins where the game started, also consumed by that rift. Tri informs us that if Zelda can save Tri's friends from within the rift, it will be repaired. Tri then allows Zelda to enter. After entering the rift, we are introduced to the Still World, the realm inside the rifts. In this world, chunks of Hyrule consumed by the rifts are scattered about. However, everything inside is decaying into nothing. People taken by the rifts are petrified, decaying slowly, and if left alone, will vanish completely, never to be seen again. Zelda can walk about within the rifts due to what Tri says is her being special, likely because of her having the blood of the goddess Hylia. But this prevents her from being turned to stone to decay into nothing like normal people would. And halfway through exploring Soothorn Ruins, we fight Dark Link, an imposter of Link created by the Still World. After obtaining the dungeon item, the Sword of Might, from him, we head to the boss, Seismic Talus. This monster has captured Tri's friends, but after saving them, the rift is repaired with their help. With the rift repaired, one of the king's associates, Minister Left, now saved from the rift, finds Zelda and shows her the way to Impa's brother's house. Here, we learn that Link and Impa's brother, Luberry, were friends, and that Luberry actually crafted the Sword of Might for Link for the purpose of destroying Ganon, and allows Zelda to upgrade the sword later. But Zelda then has two more large rifts to go to, one in Gerudo Desert and the other in Jabul Waters. After completing them and resolving the issues with the Zoras and the Gerudo, Zelda then goes to Hyrule Castle, with both Minister Left and the newly saved General Right to show the people that the king is an imposter. But upon returning to Hyrule Castle, the rift in the throne room has expanded, taking the castle and castle town with it. Zelda enters the rift to confront the evil within. The boss of this dungeon is Ganon. However, Tri realizes that this isn't the true Ganon. This Ganon has been created using the power that creates echoes. This Ganon is an echo, a pawn in the greater plan of some unknown evil. This is a crazy plot twist that can only be experienced when the developers wanted us to experience it. A twist that would not and could not have had the same effect had it been in the open air style. But the game then has 3 more dungeons to complete, each in Eldin, Faron, and Lanayru. But once you complete the second, however, you are informed by the corresponding golden goddess who this evil being is. Null, a dark god that seeks to return the world to void, one who the goddess is imprisoned within the planet itself. This takes the established lore of the creation of Hyrule and adds a reason behind it. The golden goddess has created the world to imprison Null. From that point onward, your goal is to defeat this being of nothing to save Hyrule. An overall amazing story that keeps us guessing what will happen next, only to completely turn our understanding on its head time and time again. This gives me hope for future Zelda games. Hopefully the next open-air Zelda will have a progressing story that develops with the player's experience rather than through memory recollection. But not only does this game have a great story, its progression is great as well. You have to do the Soothorn Ruins dungeon first, but afterwards you are given the choice between Gerudo Desert and Jabul Waters for your next destination. This gives us freedom within the parameters that the developers set for us. After both dungeons are completed, you then have to go to Hyrule Castle. After that, you are then given the 3 choices to your next temples, Eldin, Faron, and Lanayru. This is a great concept because it lets us play some dungeons in the order that we want, but also keeps the story linear by bringing all the completed choices to one place that you have to go to next. I really like being able to choose where I go and then having to go to one place next. It makes each section of the game feel like I'm progressing through it, rather than just choosing every dungeon I do in whatever order I choose before the game is completed. This is a very welcome return from old Zelda's linearity with a nice blend of open-air freedom, in my opinion. Now, I've heard criticisms from people online saying that we're only playing as Zelda because Link is made to fit the role of damsel in distress. But that's just not true. Link is the tough, courageous monster killer that we all know and love, and Noel knows this as well. He's cunning. He takes Link to the Still World in order to prevent Link from interfering with his plans. But even when he's in the Still World, Link is special too, and is still doing his own thing even while in the Still World, slaying monsters and trying to save Zelda even without his gear, like the selfless, courageous hero that he is. But with Link in the still world away from Hyrule, Zelda has to be the one to step up. But Zelda is not the tough, courageous monster killer. She is the embodiment of the Triforce of Wisdom. She isn't meant to be in the heat of battle constantly, and they didn't make her that kind of character. She has to strategize and use her wisdom along with her echoes properly in order to save her kingdom. And that has made for such a great story that works with the established lore and character roles. It's not a simple gender role swap for the sake of playing as a female, but a different perspective on the story taking place from Zelda's point of view rather than Link's. This game's return to roots has given me, at least, a breath of fresh air from the open-air formula. As previously stated, the game features the echo mechanic that allows the player to learn various objects and slay monsters found throughout the overworld. These can be used in Overworld Traversal and combat. Spawning a monster is the main method used to defeat other monsters. If a moblin stands in your way, you can use a Poe to take it down. At first, I was quite nervous about the game's more passive combat system shown off in the June Nintendo Direct of 2024. It seemed like simply spawning a moblin to take down some enemies or throwing a rock at an enemy enough times to give it fatal head trauma would get quite boring fairly quickly. But I was pleasantly surprised with the sheer amount of depth this simple concept brings to the table. At the beginning of the game, the player will likely only have about 7 echoes, 3 of which are usable in combat: the crate, the Hyrule Castle pot, and the rock. And these aren't really that powerful, with the former 2 breaking upon throwing them. But when you're let loose on the overworld, you're met by a Zol, one of the weakest monsters in the game, so one of these echoes will take it down easily. You can then learn and use the Zol to attack and kill a Keese. Keese are stronger than Zols and deal more damage, so you may need to summon a few Zols. But having a Keese on your side is quite handy. They can fly, allowing for aerial striking, and by having a Keese, you can use one to attack another enemy that may take more hits to defeat, like a rope. This adds depth to the combat. It develops as you play the game and obtain more and more echoes, making you, the player, stronger with each battle. And there are a lot of echoes to collect, a variety of which are quite useful but completely optional. Echoes like the Lynel, the level 3 Darknut, and the level 3 Lizalfos are all in completely out-of-the-way locations, but by finding and defeating them, it rewards the player with an ally that can one-hit pretty much anything. Tri gives you the Tri-Rod, but she's also the source of its power. The triangles following her are what limit the player from casting an infinite number of echoes. You start with a measly 3 triangles, which is perfectly fine when all the echoes you have available to you only cost 1. But if you learn a P-Hat early on, however, P-Hats cost 3 triangles. This prevents you from casting any more echoes while a P-Hat is spawned, as well as forces you to strategize which echoes to use, how many to use, and what scenarios you use them in. The Bed Echo allows you to heal when you lay down in it, but if a P-Hat is spawned, then casting a bed leaves you vulnerable as the P-Hat will no longer be out to attack. You need to keep track of your already cast echoes if you want to heal during battle. If you need a stronger ally like the P-Hat, then you may need to hold off on your healing, or try your luck with a monster that takes less power to summon. But you are not limited to only 3 triangles for the entire game, however. As you progress through the story, completing dungeons and or side quest related rifts, Tri's power increases level by level, either rewarding you with an additional triangle, or reducing the number required for summoning certain echoes per level up. But the combat deepens yet. In the middle of the first dungeon, Soothorn Ruins, after fighting against Darklink, you are rewarded with the Sword of Might, the dungeon's main item. This allows you to attack enemies head-on yourself without needing to cast echoes. But it comes at a price. The sword runs on your magic meter that can only be replenished with energy collected from the Still World, Rift monsters, or from the game's potions. This forces you to strategize when, how often, and how long you use your sword. This gives you so many options with each monster encounter. Do you use your sword exclusively? Perhaps you want to fight alongside a Darknut. Or are you more conservative with your magic and want to only use a Lizalfos? It's completely up to you how to tackle any monster problem, and I absolutely adore this game for that. Also, if you don't feel like fighting an enemy in the moment, you can use the water block echo to literally drown that enemy. So not only are your monster echoes and sword options, but you can also defeat minor enemies in a flash with the water block. Try's ability Bind is also useful in combat. This ability allows Zelda to grab enemies and objects and move them around, or attach herself to them and copy the movement of the object. So this in combination with the water block is a viable option, but you can also literally grab an enemy and chuck them off a cliff if you want to. This, along with all other methods of attack, make each fight unique and fun. As well as giving the player more options in combat, it also balances your power. If you could use the sword infinitely, then there would be absolutely no point in using your echoes at all. So, it incentivizes the player to use their echoes for combat as well as attack directly. But you can upgrade your sword with the game's collectibles, might crystals, awarded from side quests to push the limits that balance your power if you want to. These upgrades, which I will discuss more in depth later, are great because they reward you for doing side quests by expanding the depth of the already interesting combat, either by upgrading your damage output or the size of your magic meter, extending your sword use time. And to me, this is such a great feeling. Zelda games in the past few years have had combat that I feel is quite repetitive and boring, not to mention their lack of side quests that expand upon it. The open-air Zeldas struggle with non-rewarding combat that really only gifts the player with yet another weapon that'll break in 5 minutes. Echoes of Wisdom's combat actually feels rewarding, however, because if I do encounter a monster, I don't feel the urge to completely avoid non-required monster encounters because of the fear of losing one of my weapons. If I defeat a new enemy, I get to add it to my arsenal permanently, and make it fight for me as many times as I want or need, instead of gaining another temporary weapon that only serves to extend the time that it takes for me to run out of attacks. Also, with the peace of mind of knowing that my echoes can be used as much as I need, I actually will go out of my way to fight monsters instead of avoiding conflict as much as I can. I feel this combat system is one of the most unique and interesting that we've seen in the series to date, and I hope we can see more like it in future games. The game does a good job of limiting the player's ability to completely cheat sections of the overworld while still giving them freedom. In Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, you can climb on pretty much anything and skip things like trails and specific paths that the developers would have wanted us to go through. Echoes of Wisdom does allow you to walk on top of trees and things that would normally be barriers in games like Link's Awakening or the Oracles. However, your ability to get up onto those high-up locations is limited by how many echoes you're able to cast. This, combined with the player being unable to walk through rifts, allows the developers to give the player an experience that gives them all the freedoms of exploring, but within certain parameters set by them. At the beginning of the game, the rift in Soothorn Forest is huge, cutting off the path to Hyrule Field until you complete the first dungeon. But, with your 3 triangles available to you, you can stack beds up to get on top of some trees and walk around up there all that you want. And there are even treasure chests that reward you for exploring. But you still cannot leave the Soothorn region. You can explore as much as you want within the contained area that the developers have set for you, and this is exactly what Zelda has been needing. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom had a heavy emphasis on freedom, which seems good on paper, but there is such thing as too much freedom. Being able to go anywhere and experience the story at any time makes it so that pivotal story scenarios or important locations that are meant for late game are given to you from the get-go. But giving us freedom within contained parameters is great. You still get the satisfaction of finding a secret treasure chest or a new helpful echo, but the exploration doesn't take you away from the narrative or given scenario. Another thing about Echoes of Wisdom is that you don't have every ability or item from the start. You acquire new echoes and abilities throughout the game's progression, which allow you to do more and more in the overworld. However, the water block echo that you learn in Jabul Waters kind of breaks the game when it comes to traversing the overworld. You can stack water blocks on top of each other and swim up them, and the more triangles that you have, the more you can stack up. These can also stick to walls, allowing you to move both vertically and horizontally. And you might be thinking that this is literally just climbing from the last two Zelda games. And you're right. You can ascend vertically up a mountain, which can skip important things like caves that you would need to go through. And while you cannot do this in Hebra, Death Mountain allows you to skip the caves that take you up to Goron City. Caves that take you to important locations in Old Zelda were required to go through to get to said location. The Tal mountain range in Link's Awakening had a whole network of caves that the player needed to go through in order to get to both Eagle Tower and Turtle Rock. And this cave network we had to go through was intricate and made the player explore these caves to progress to the dungeon. And taking out necessary caves is one quibble that I have with Echoes of Wisdom's Overworld Traversal. Another source of friction for me is warping. There are way too many warp points in this game. Locations you can warp to, called waypoints, are so close together that you hardly need to walk anywhere. Granted, it isn't nearly as bad as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, with a shrine on every square inch of the map, but there are still far too many in Echoes of Wisdom. This makes the already small-scale world feel even tinier. Link's Awakening has quite a small world, with the entirety of it being just an island. However, it feels bigger than it is because you still have to walk everywhere. There are warp points, yes, but in order to warp, you either need to walk to a warp point or complete a side quest to learn the song that lets you warp at any time. So, while you can fast travel to certain locations, you still have to do most of the actual traveling yourself. Echoes of Wisdom just doesn't have this. Once you've found a waypoint, you can warp there any time from the start of the game. You don't have to walk to a waypoint to warp, and there's certainly no item that makes warping at any time a possibility. This makes walking around the map a one-time deal. Once you've found a waypoint, there's no incentive to walk back to that location, just warp back. No need for legs. However, although I do have some issues with it, I do love the overworld of this game. As mentioned previously, Echoes of Wisdom was made by Grezzo, the company who remade Link's Awakening, and this game uses the same adorable, toy-like diorama art style from Link's Awakening. This art style is one of my favorites that we have gotten so far, and its use in both of these Grezzo projects is phenomenal. I love seeing how they've taken all the characters and enemies and turned them into little toys. However, this art style, although visually stunning to me, really needs to end with this game. It was a novelty when it was Link's Awakening, because we hadn't seen it previously, and it was unique. But then with this game, we've already seen it before, so it's not as novel as it was 6 years ago. So while it is really cool, and with how much I love it, this art style should really be limited to these two games. To me, dungeons are the core of what makes Zelda games special. I love solving puzzles and using my keys to progress through a contained area, something Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom weren't able to accomplish due to their structure. But from its first to its last, Echoes of Wisdom does dungeons right. The game has a return to the classic puzzle box dungeons that were notably absent in the previous two entries. obtaining keys from various rooms to unlock doors, fighting a mini-boss, and finally obtaining the big key to gain entry to the boss. This return to the foundation of the series has made me love this game even more. The dungeons in this game are simpler than most other Zelda games that have come before, but the game is a sort of introduction of old Zelda for the newer fans who are used to the open-air dungeons' more simple puzzle-solving style. So of course, the dungeons aren't going to be the mind-numbing labyrinths of Oracle of Ages. The dungeons of this game have puzzles that can be solved multiple ways while still limiting us to a set number of solutions. For example, in the Farron Temple, there are crystals that need to be energized with electricity, so we can use any of the electric echoes that we've learned so far to do so. These may be the Buzz Blob, the Electric Keys, or the Electric Wizrobe. All of these have the same elemental effects, but it's up to you to choose which ones to use. The game also has the echoes that you need for a certain dungeon's puzzle within the dungeon itself, so that the game doesn't rely on you to have already found said echo in the overworld previously or in another dungeon. Soothorn Ruins, for example, gives you the Strantula, an echo that shoots a web upwards, allowing you to climb on it. And the echo is used throughout the dungeon and in many others as well. And that echo is the only echo that can let you cross certain gaps, having the player go, "Hey, I remember this." Also, the Lanayru Temple has a puzzle that requires a fire keys, but has one in that same room in case you didn't do Elden Temple first, so that you aren't completely screwed and needing to do a whole nother dungeon before finishing this one. This balance makes me happy because the open-endedness of some puzzles makes me get creative, but it also offers the classic puzzles that have been missing for so long. But Echoes of Wisdom not only has good dungeons, it has a lot of them. There are a total of 8 dungeons in the game, each with their own theming, personality, puzzles, and complexity. This expansion in dungeon quantity is a major step up from the last 2 games. Before them, 8 dungeons was simply a standard of the Zelda series, with some having even more than 8. But Breath of the Wild only had 5, and Tears of the Kingdom only had 6. That was a major disappointment for me, at least, whose value and love of the Zelda series rests strongly on the dungeons. But while Breath of the Wild's divine beasts all look pretty much the same, each of the dungeons in Echoes of Wisdom are very unique, with their own designs and atmosphere. You can actually tell the difference between Soothorn Ruins and Lanayru Temple just based off of looks. But the music for each is phenomenal too. Breath of the Wild went for a more ambient style to the music, so it wasn't the epic atmospheric bangers of songs that the old Zeldas offered, like the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time, or the Stone Tower from Majora's Mask. These older dungeons all have unique themes that are atmospheric, memorable, and go along with the theme of the dungeon, and Echoes of Wisdom is no different. The instruments used in Lanayru Temple's theme make for a cold, icy-sounding song. Farron Temple sounds damp and foresty. And Gerudo's Sanctum sounds like a mysterious sandy crypt. The music is on par with the thematic music of old era of Zelda before the open-air games came into existence, which is something that needed to happen in my opinion. Music plays such a key role in making a dungeon memorable to me. With Breath of the Wild's ambient soundtrack, it makes the dungeon exploration boring and non-memorable. But Echoes of Wisdom's dungeon themes make for a memorable gameplay experience and a catchy song that I hum to myself throughout my day. I do have some problems with this game's dungeons, however. Remember those pesky waypoints I mentioned earlier? Well, each of the dungeons in the game have waypoints within them, meaning you can warp to the rooms that have them, including the room before the boss. This takes away part of the charm that the old Zelda dungeons had, where you had to use your dungeon map in sync with your own mental map that recognizes which rooms lead to where you need to go. But by having warp zones within the dungeons, it takes away the player's need to figure out where to go on their own. And by having a waypoint in the room right before the boss, that makes this issue even worse. Finding the boss door before you find the boss key in old dungeons would make you backtrack through the dungeon to find the key, then take it back to where you found the door. But if you already went through the challenge of finding the boss door in this game, it's just a matter of warping back to that room after obtaining the boss key without the need of remembering how you got to the room in the first place. So, although I do see how this could take away from the frustration of remembering where you came from for other people, it took away a key aspect of what made Zelda Dungeons special and challenging for me. The game has a return of dungeon items as well, which I am really happy about, though only 3 dungeons actually have a main item: Suthor Ruins, Gerudo Sanctum, and Elden Temple. These are the 3 dungeons that have a Dark Link mini-boss in them, each rewarding you with one of Link's items, the sword, bow, and bombs of might. These items each have uses in their dungeons along with others as well. However, there are only 3 dungeon items within the 8 dungeons, and while the sword is useful throughout the entire game, the bow has limited practical use aside from shooting 1 crate in Gerudo Sanctum and being another weapon when fighting monsters. But if you think this is bad, the bombs are even worse. You get the bombs in Elden Temple, which could either be your 5th, 6th, or 7th dungeon in the entire game, meaning you could receive the bombs in the penultimate dungeon that takes place before the final boss. Not to mention, they are made completely useless due to the fact that you learn the bombfish echo in Jabul waters. Really, the only practical use of the bomb item is breaking these blocks in Elden Temple and for fighting Volvagia when he's in the lava. Using your bow and bombs also consumes your energy meter as well, so I have a hard time using my bombs at the cost of my precious energy when I can cast as many bombfish as I want with no repercussions. The bow also isn't very strong unless you upgrade the crap out of it with the might crystals. The bow allows you to do massive damage once you do a charge attack after the first upgrade. The last upgrade just makes the damage even bigger. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that, I just needed to address that here though. But I would much rather use my might crystals for upgrading my sword's damage output and energy gauge, because I just use the sword more. This renders the bow even more trivial. So although I do see that being able to use these 2 items at any time without consuming energy would trivialize using the sword, it does feel like a kick in the face that these 2 items don't have much use outside of their respective dungeons. Another big issue I have is that you can cheat the entirety of Jabul Ruins and beat what would be a 20-some minute dungeon in only 2 minutes. Normally, you walk on this ground and it breaks, sending Zelda down to the basement where she's chased by the boss. Then, you have to activate 5 switches that add water to a pool that a geyser shoots, with each section of the dungeon giving you enough water to progress to the next. A very cool dungeon. However, you can just skip that entire floor-breaking bit with a flying tile. Then, you can cast a Crawltula, bind to it, and follow it up the wall. Then, you can go to the room on the right, swim for a little bit, and grab the boss key, swim back up to the central room, cast another Crawltula, and climb up to the boss door. To some people, this may be super cool being able to beat an entire dungeon in 2 minutes, but for me, that just feels crappy. A small oversight made it possible to not have to do an entire dungeon that they put time into to make. And although I don't personally cheat the dungeon, the fact that I could if I wanted to really frustrates me, and I wish they'd fix it. But overall, I am quite pleased with the dungeons of this game. Let's take a break from the negativity for a second. I have absolutely no complaints about this game's bosses. They are all winners. They all lean towards a more puzzle-solving approach, either making use of your echoes found in the dungeon or bind, and all make use of the sword. Seismic Talus has Zelda use bind to pull off his weak spot, allowing for sword strike. Mogriff has Zelda place one of the statue echoes found in the Gerudo Sanctum to block his attacks, knocking him over, allowing for you to attack. And Ganon has Zelda using the sword the entire time, just like in A Link to the Past. As well as making great use of each boss's desired method of fighting, each boss looks imposing, and their designs themselves hint at how to fight them, so that you aren't completely in the dark on how to tackle each boss. Volvagia's necklace is brightly colored and the source of his magic, so it's obvious that you gotta target that. And Scorchill has a fire and ice helmet that allows him elemental attacks, letting the player know that you need to attack him with the opposite element. And that's just to name a few. All of these bosses, while having different methods of dealing damage, still force the player to figure out how to inflict damage. And all of the extra methods of dealing damage are usually from experimenting with your own ideas. Ganon's trident can be grabbed with bind and be used to deal damage to him, if you had the idea to experiment with that. Similarly, Mogriff can be knocked out by dropping a statue under him as he's diving from up high. I love all of this game's bosses, and I'm really happy with the care and effort that was put into each and every one of them. This game has side characters that you may only interact with for one dungeon quest, but they still have well thought out character development and intriguing stories and personalities that get the player attached to them throughout the course of your time together. Two in particular are Darstan and Conde. These are the two characters I feel are the most well written in this game. Darstan, the Goron chief, helps you throughout the Elden Volcano quest. His father, the previous chief, died, and all Darstan has left of his father is a stone slate with advice for Darstan as the new chief. Darstan is still young, and he isn't confident in his own abilities, and is constantly referring to the slate to solve any problem. But when trouble strikes, he proves that he has the ability to be a good chief. In the Lizalfos burrow, he shows off his mathematical calculation skills by knocking rocks off of the ceiling, defeating half of the monsters in the cave. He shows his selflessness in the rock roast quarry by taking rock roast to his hungry comrades. And the Goron elders point out to Darstan what a great chief he's been. But Darstan's lack of confidence leads him to believe that it was only because of his father's wisdom that he was able to do those things. He continuously says that he isn't the chief his father was, and that he isn't good enough. But his time helping Zelda pushes him out of his comfort zone, and she is there alongside him to help. She's there to help him fight the monsters in the Lizalfos burrow, and she's there to help bring rock roast to his friends. And this helps Darstan see that he can do the things that his father can. And he learns that he isn't his father. He's Darstan, and he can lead his people in his own unique way. And he smashes his father's tablet, his most prized possession, to help Zelda destroy a boulder blocking the way to the rift in the crater, symbolically throwing away his old unconfident ways and moving on to be the great chief that his father knew he could become. This whole story with Darstan is very impactful, seeing how his character changes from a cowardly, timid little Goron to a great chief by learning his value and worth through his interactions with you, the player. That is a well-written character. But the last character I want to touch on, and one of my favorites in the entire series, is Conde, a Yeti in Hebra who helps you get to the Lanayru Temple. You find him passed out in a snowstorm, and upon waking him up, he offers to take you to his home until the storm passes. Once you get there, he tells you about his big brother and how he taught Conde many things, but that his brother is off on an adventure. Conde also tells you about his dad, who owns the tools that Conde uses to clean the mountain. Once the storm passes, Conde leaves to go to work. Following him outside, you see him talking to a mound of stone, saying, "Dad, I promise to do my best today," and he leaves for a higher point on the mountain to clean. His father is dead, and Conde has been living by himself for who knows how long, and seeing his optimism and happiness in such a hard time is quite depressing, because you know he's staying happy to avoid the hurt he feels with the two closest people gone from his life. But higher up, you see that cleaning the mountain is him attempting to get rid of the rifts on the mountain. But his efforts are all for naught. He shovels snow on the rifts day after day in a futile attempt to get rid of it before his brother comes home. Tri tries to explain to him that it isn't how it works, but he writes it off as him needing to try harder. But after you clear the rift, Conde celebrates, being proud of his work, happy that he cleaned the mountain for his brother, oblivious to the fact that it was Zelda who cleared it. Towards the top of the mountain, you see the back of what looks like another Yeti, and Conde is ecstatic about seeing what he thinks is his older brother. But the figure climbs to a higher point on the mountain, ignoring Conde. Conde chases after it, leaving you to climb after him. At the top, however, you hear him yell out in pain and see the figure walk away from a floored Conde. Conde is distraught, thinking that his own brother would beat him up like that, but he continues trying to stay positive, still bouncing happily like he used to. But this is when he breaks. Although he says he's dealt with harder blows than that, he doesn't feel like himself. He tells you that he doesn't think he was good. The last thing his brother said before he left was "Be good, Conde," and the only logical thing in Conde's head is that he simply was not good. And now his brother, his last family member left alive, who he hasn't seen in years, the only thing keeping him from a life of eternal loneliness, has beaten him up and left him. He kept himself happy in the hopes his brother would come back because that was all he could do. But now he has nothing. His father is dead, and now his brother wants nothing to do with him. This story was likely the most emotional I have ever gotten playing a Zelda game. The seemingly happy-go-lucky Yeti living by himself in the mountains, carrying all of this emotional weight on his shoulders, finally breaking, is devastating and makes me love his character so much. But the best part is that he gets a happy ending. In the temple, Conde's brother left a record that states how much he loves his little brother and how proud he is of Conde. The Yeti that Conde mistook for his brother was actually the boss of the Lanayru temple, Scorchill, and was not his brother at all. This news brings joy back to Conde. His depression completely disappears at this. Hearing that his brother loves him and he is still on his adventure gives Conde the courage to continue awaiting his brother's return. He says that now he can wait forever until his brother comes home. He runs around overjoyed and shouts as loudly as he can in happiness, finally bringing him the hope that he needs to hang in there. And at the end of the game, during the credits, you see Conde jumping for joy as he sees his brother's hot air balloon in the distance, finally coming home to his loving little brother. And that almost brought me to tears at the end of the game. These characters are all well written and show the sheer amount of care and effort the developers put into this game. And I really hope that we can have this amount of quality within the characters of the next Zelda game, open air or otherwise. The side quests of this game are quite fun, and as previously stated, very rewarding. The smaller scale of this game's world has fewer side characters residing in it than the open air games, hence, less side quests total that the player has to keep track of. Fewer side quests means that they don't take up the majority of your time spent in the game. They are side quests, after all. This is an issue I've had with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom because the majority of the content in those games is side stuff that we aren't required to do. But with this game, the developers didn't make the meat of the game side content that's just thrown in random places in the overworld. They put thought and time into the story of the game while still giving us a decent amount of side content too. But the side quests are good too. There are quests that range from clearing moblins out of a man's house foundation to entire optional mini-dungeons with their own secret bosses that are on par with the main bosses of the game. But these fights are all completely optional, great as they are, and fighting them is half the reward for going out of your way to do the side quest. These secret bosses also give a piece of heart for defeating them. Again, this makes the side content rewarding. You get to fight a whole new boss that doesn't impact the main story, but you also get a piece of heart from it. And these secret bosses are also callbacks to old Zelda games too. Smog from Oracle of Ages, and Baronade from Ocarina of Time. And that adds to the fun of completing these quests if you're a longtime fan like me and catch these references. But while pieces of heart are a reward from side quests, things like rupees, might crystals, clothing, and accessories are all rewards from the side quests as well. The smaller the quest, the smaller the reward. The Up a Wall side quest has Zelda save a villager from some moblins. It's simple, easy, and quick. And the reward is scaled to the intensity of that quest, 20 rupees. That reward does help you out though. It can get you a wide variety of things. 20 rupees in any of the previous two games is basically worthless due to everything being ridiculously expensive. This leads me to my next point. The items you can obtain from the side content are actually helpful. Might crystals for one allow you to upgrade Link's equipment at Impa's brother's house. However, accessories are widely useful too. Perks like taking half the damage or a higher likelihood of getting raw materials from pots and monsters. All of the 26 accessories in this game have different applications and usefulness. Also, the number of accessories you can equip at any given time is upgradable via the Great Fairy, who charges rupees to increase your capacity for accessory equipping, which gives good use for your rupees and an incentive to collect them. Speaking of uses of rupees, this game handles them perfectly. The Great Fairy upgrades for one, but also purchasing heart pieces and certain accessories at stores, paying your toll for minigames, and for smoothie shops, which are all things that can help you during your playthrough. The smoothie shops run by business scrubs have you combining any two raw materials together to make a smoothie, each with different effects: cold proof, fireproof, energy recovery, or just simply giving your hearts back. All for the price of 10 rupees to make it yourself, or 120 without giving up any materials. The smoothies offer a good use of the rupees and give you a choice with how to spend them. But rupees aside, likely the most fun side location in the game is the Slumber Dojo in Kakariko Village. This place offers various challenges like hordes of monsters that either need to be taken down with your current echoes, or have you start with nothing and you learn the echoes around you to take on the challenge. All of these are for rewards like the katana, an item used in another side quest, as well as accessories that reduce the speed at which your energy drains, smoothie ingredients, etc. But my personal favorite challenges are the Titans Gatherings. These challenges pit you against the game's story bosses one after another, testing how fast you can beat them. The first one has you fight the first 3 bosses, the second having you fight the last 3 bosses, and finally the third having you fight every boss in the game aside from the final boss. These challenges are so fun, and you can do them as many times as you want. Also, completing every challenge in the Slumber Dojo rewards you with a green Link tunic, which is a super rad reward. However, while I love Echoes of Wisdom's side content, there are 2 quests in particular that I have a problem with: getting a horse and the automatons. These quests are both fairly long and quite out of the way, taking away from the story's progression. The horse quest is at Hyrule Ranch, which is sort of on the way to Kakariko, but you are likely to miss it early on because you don't have to even go to Kakariko until you're on your way to the Elden Temple, which could even be the second to last dungeon you complete. But even if you do go there, the quest has you rescue a missing horse from the ranch owner. This unlocks the rental horse that you can borrow at any time. But if you want your own horse, then you have to go to Hyrule Castle to talk to Impa, who says she's been raising a steed for you. You now must go back to the ranch where you learn that your horse went missing and got taken by a rift. You then follow the ranch people to the rift and complete it. Now you have a horse of your own. This quest is not bad at all. In fact, it's actually quite fun. However, the reward of the horse is not nearly as useful or impactful to the player as getting Epona in Ocarina of Time. All the horse gets you is the ability to play the horse minigames at the ranch and the ability to run fast when traveling. Also, you aren't even able to get your own horse until the Hyrule Castle dungeon is completed. But even with the increased mobility, the important locations in the game all have a waypoint nearby to warp to, taking away from the magnitude that the speed the horse can move brings. Why spend time on a long side quest that gives you a reward that's completely trivialized by how warping works? The automatons are the other quest I have an issue with. Dampé creates little wind-up robots themed after enemies for Zelda to use, given that she has the echoes of said enemy and a specific material for Dampé to use. And this is a very cool concept. However, you cannot even begin the quest until Hyrule Castle is completed. Furthermore, encountering Dampé is typically on your way to Faron, which again has the chance to be the second to last dungeon in the game. But aside from its placing in the game's progression, the quest is not worth your time this late in the game, sadly. Dampé has you gather materials that he uses to make the automatons. All of these items have you go to other regions of the world to obtain, and most have you do another side quest in order to obtain them as well. You have to do quite a bit of challenges in order to receive the katana from the Slumber Dojo. You have to master the mango minigame in Gerudo Desert in order to receive the golden fan, and to obtain the fireworks echo, you have to have already completed the Elden quest as well. So not only do you have to go out of your way to get to the areas that have said item, you usually have to do yet another side quest on top of that, adding to the length of time it takes to just get one automaton. And there are 6 of these things. But each automaton has its own unique ability that can prove useful in combat. The Roboblin will use a sword slash that deals massive damage to all the monsters on screen. The Goldfinch will attack enemies, giving you loads of rupees with each attack. And the Tok'tarok will spit fireworks at enemies, dealing a lot of damage within the blast radius. And yeah, they are really cool. However, they are hardly worth using. If you want to use an automaton, you take it out same way you would an echo you have, but it doesn't do anything yet. You have to wind it up. It doesn't sound too bad, but it takes forever to wind these things up, and the winding process leaves you completely vulnerable to enemies. And yes, there are smoothies and accessories that make the winding process faster, but it still leaves you vulnerable until the thing is wound up. And in that same amount of time, you could have simply used your echoes or even your sword to take down at least a couple of enemies. And yeah, you could wind one up before you go into battle, but they revert back to not moving after being wound up for a bit. Also, if your automaton gets hit enough times in battle, it's broken. You cannot use it again unless you pay Dampé to fix it. But you don't pay him with rupees, but monster stones, one of your materials. Granted, you can buy monster stones from Dampé and obtain them from killing monsters and opening treasure chests, but they are still less common than rupees, which makes it hurt more when you have to fix an automaton. Yes, you pay Dampé with monster stones, but that's only if you don't want to pay rupees. This side quest would have been way better had it been given to you earlier on in the game as part of the story, preferably after the first dungeon, so that you can go look for the items needed to craft the automatons with the progression of the story, instead of having to interrupt your adventure in the latter portion of the game to head back to an area you explored in the first couple of hours of the game. However, these complaints are not major issues I have that make the game unfun or even bad. These side quests are actually quite enjoyable, and I had a lot of fun completing them. My main issues with them are simply just the timing of their introductions, which could make a player miss these fun quests on their playthrough. But my complaints are only meant to show what takes the game from perfection in my eyes. Breath of the Wild's, and to a greater extent Tears of the Kingdom's user interface, suffered from horizontal scrolling that interrupted the flow of combat, puzzle solving, and just experiencing the game. Especially if you need to fuse an item that you haven't used since the beginning of the game when a niche puzzle requires it towards the end. But this game, although it uses horizontal scrolling to set which echo to use, is not bad at all. You can sort your echoes by last used, most used, last learned, cost, and type. and all are great for finding the exact echo that you need. But if the echo you require is buried underneath a mound of previously learned and used echoes, you can look at the notebook in the subscreen and choose your desired echo with a grid instead of endlessly scrolling horizontally. The scrolling is supposed to be a means of making things a bit quicker. But if that doesn't offer a faster option for you, then pausing the game to choose from a menu that goes both horizontally and vertically is there for your use as well. And if that's still a problem, Nintendo's recent update to the game allows you to favorite certain echoes and filter your echoes by favorites as well. But not only is this good, navigating the pause screen is great too. I mean, look at this. I can go from far left to the far right with one button push, and I can go from top to bottom in the same way. This is a small but very good change to the menu from the previous two games. In Tears of the Kingdom, if you want to go from far left to far right, you gotta hold the R button or mash it in order to get to the save screen. But each section of the pause menu is well organized too. There's the key item screen that has your pieces of heart, Link's items, your bottles, and tries level. The item screen has your smoothie ingredients and side quest rewards. Drinks has your potions and smoothies. Equipment has your outfits and accessories. Notebook has your learned echoes and automatons. And System allows you to save your game and use amiibos, among other things. But I do have one issue with the map of this game. It reuses the same yellow dot beacon telling you where to go that Breath of the Wild introduced, as well as a mini-map. The addition of a mini-map is useless with how small the game's world is, and makes the world feel even smaller yet. Also, having the beacon telling you where to go at all times takes away from the necessity of the map. In A Link to the Past, important destinations were marked by an X by NPCs, and you could only see if you were going in the right direction by looking at the map, making it one of the most useful features of the entire game. But a mini-map that has a beacon telling you where to go eliminates the need to look at the map because you can see which way you need to go at all times. Another issue I have with this game's UI is that anytime you get a new main or side quest, a huge effect comes on screen announcing that you have a new quest. And that can get really annoying, especially if you're trying to see monsters around you or want to see the person that you're talking to. It does not go away for a good 3 to 5 seconds, and doesn't go away when you talk to someone. And this happens every time you receive and complete a quest, which is a bit frustrating. However, this game's UI is great for the most part, even with these flaws. Echoes of Wisdom is the newest entry in the Legend of Zelda franchise, and has me in awe at how masterfully it combines elements from new and old Zelda. Its riveting story, deep strategic combat, and fresh new mechanics have all combined to create a Zelda experience that has me coming back multiple times again to re-experience it. And although the game does have some minor issues, they don't take away from the enjoyment and much needed combination of old and new Zelda that have made this game so great in my eyes. This game truly is a gem of an entry to the Zelda series, especially considering the rough patch the franchise has been through in the past few years. And despite its imperfections, I truly hope we can see more like it in the future. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate the support that likes and subscribers offer. You guys are all appreciated and loved. Thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one.